Hello and welcome to your tutorial on how to do my style of real estate photography. I'm going to start with having you get into the practice folder, and hopefully you've gotten your link to get in the Google Drive and get into the practice folder. I'm not going to have you download all those pictures because you would be taking all night, but I'm going to get you started with a few, which depending on your internet speed could take you a while yet still. So I want you to get files 6196, 6197, 6198, 6199, 6200, 201, 202, then 6385, 386, 387, 388, 389, 390, 391, 392, 393, 394, 395, 396, and then 6494. So I need you to get all those files and download them and then put them in a directory. Probably let's just call it practice folder, and I guess I called mine folder, but you can call yours folder or folder, whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. So go ahead and download all those files and come back to this tutorial when you're ready for that. So I guess you've downloaded all your files, and so now it's time to open up Lightroom Classic. And Lightroom Classic will open up and look like this. And we need to go to first to the library. You want to go to a new catalog, and we're going to name it something. We're going to call it Practice. Well, I'm going to have to call it Practice 1 because I've already named one Practice. And we're waiting for it to load up. Okay, so we want to import all those files. So we'll go to Import. And then mine happens to be on my desktop. So I'm going to go to Browse to my desktop, or you're going to need to browse to wherever you're at. And there's all the files that I'm going to have you work with at first. So I'm going to go ahead and import. Okay, so once we've imported all the files, we're just going to go to the develop screen. Okay, and so the first one we're going to work with is this little dining room table with a window pull and a door pull. So actually it would just be another window pull. So what we do is we're going to go through each one of these pictures and take a look at what they look like to decide which ones we're going to go through. Okay, so this one obviously is the flash of the room. And in the flash of the room, we're seeing shadow of the fan. And we really don't want to use a shadow of the fan, but we can use this picture for other things, like getting clear definition of these curtains and things, and the chairs and so forth that got flashed. But we won't want to use the ceiling, right? So we're going to go through that. And the next one will be the last one in this series. This was the window pull. So this is where we flashed the window with the flash and had the exposure set to grab what is outside. Right? So we don't want to use the flash for our HDR. First we want to just start with the one. And the reason I do this one with a window exposure here, because this is our backup. Because a lot of times when we'll start processing and we do a window flash, sometimes there's no way to avoid getting the flash of the flash, the mono light in the window. You're going to see a big glare somewhere here sometimes. This one happened to come out all right. So I wanted to keep it simple this time. So let's select that. And the last one we'll select is this one here. And that is the brightest ambient shot I took. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and brighten the ambient on this one over here a little bit. So make it a little bit more white with the exposure. So I'm going to clear it up because I want all this to be as white as possible. May have not gone quite high enough, but usually I have an exposure that's bright enough. But in this case, this last one, I think I'm going to go a little higher because I want to get this brightness in there. So I'm going to select that, and the last one I'm going to select this last ambient. I'm going to leave the flash alone for right now, and I'm going to leave the window pool alone for right now. And we're going to go to File, Plug in Extras, and then the blend exposures using the LR Infuse. That was the program that I had you download and install as a plugin for your Lightroom. And in here in the settings, we want to make sure that we create blended image in the same folder as the primary image in the set. That's got to be set. We're going to have append to HDR. We're going to do it in a format of JPEG. And then we're going to open the blended file in Other. And we're going to go to Photoshop so that it automatically opens up Photoshop in the when it's done blending. If you go over here to Auto Align, we want to make sure that we really need to automatically align images before blending them. And configuration, use applications hosted by the photographer's toolbox. And then Infuse for newer processors. And then on air, leave temporary files alone, and please place log file on desktop. Under Infuse, I have these settings. The exposure weight, this is all by default, I believe. And then extra we're not putting any extra command line parameters, and then have this set on automatic. So I think these were all what were the defaults. And of course, default, we're going to output to HDR, and it's going to open up Photoshop. And I believe that it actually creates a file somewhere on your computer too, but we won't be using that file in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and infuse the images. And this is where you could take a small little break because it takes a little while for the images to generate, and usually take like a little drink of water or something during this point. And I'm going to pause while it does that and then come back when the image is opened in Photoshop. Okay, so it's done its infusing and it's opening up Photoshop for me now, and then we're about to see the image at the result. So this was the result that it came up with infusing all those images. I think the door came out pretty good. Of course, this is everything's kind of underexposed, and we need to fix all that. So the first step that I do after I've got the infused image is I go to the filter and I go to camera raw filter. And if this comes up, get rid of that. So, and then a lot of times I'll start with this auto. Now, auto even detects that it was underexposed, and I'm showing that it still seems a little underexposed to me. I like things to be bright. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to bring the contrast up a little bit. I have to be careful with the shadow. So if the shadow goes up too high, then it makes the wood start to turn orange and stuff. So I'm going to play with that a little bit and try to get as much shadow as I can out without changing the color of the wood. basically take the blacks down a little bit to make the blacks a little shine up a little better. Clarity I'll bring up a little bit, and that sometimes will darken the picture a little bit, or darken the areas that we need, and give out a little bit more detail of things like the lace in this tablecloth, and vibrance a little bit. Of course, all this is done, most of this is done in sweetening later, and so I think that looks okay for right now. So I'm going to click OK, and this is the result. So after I brightened up the exposure, you can see that I've started to lose this window pull, and it's starting to become overexposed here and blown out. So, but before I do my window pull, the first thing I do is I get this polygonal lasso tool, and I feather it about 2 pixels. Actually, I think I'm going to make it about 5 pixels, and didn't want to select that. So, and then I select the ceiling out. So you just go to the corners of each of the ceiling. Don't have to be perfect, but you do try to get these edges best that you can. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to go around here, and then I'm going to select out. So now I have the ceiling selected. So after selecting the ceiling, I'll go to Image, Adjustments, and then Levels. And while I'm in my levels here, this middle slider, I'll just go to the left a bit, and as you can see, it starts to brighten up that ceiling. I want that ceiling to be pretty white. It makes it look nice and clean, and get all those dark shadows like this out. Now I like some shading, so I don't like it to be so blown up, but I like it to be a little white right there, to where it looks good to me. I think that looks pretty good right there. I'm going to click off there and deselect. Alright, so that looks better. So now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the window pull. So I have to go back to Lightroom, and then go to the window pull, and this is where we flash the window. So you'll know that the picture that flashed the window is where we, you can see that the exposure for the outside is about correct, but everything on the inside is going to be overexposed. So I'm thinking maybe that the exposure still outside is still a little too overexposed, and so I'm going to take that down a little bit over here on the exposure. And now I'm going to right mouse click on this picture here, and I go Edit in Photoshop. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop, and I usually make an action for this, but I'm going to go through it. I'm going to select all. I'm going to copy. I'm going to go back to the original image where we were working with the HDR image, and I'm going to paste it on top. So now we got this on top of that, and I'm going to select both of these images, and I'm going to go to Auto Align Layers. And then you can see that since I did that, the camera did move a little bit because I am moving with exposures and stuff. So you can see that there's a little bit difference between it. So pretty important to get that step, otherwise you're going to start getting ghosting of, like the lines in the chair or table or even window. And then actually in the window you'll get sometimes a lot of a chromatic discoloration, like a big red line or green line. Sometimes that comes up anyway, but I just wanted to show you to do that. So next, and I hate that polygonal tool because it just kind of wants to take over. I'm going to put it on the brush tool to get rid of it. I'm going to go back and select the layer, the top layer. That's our window pull. I'm going to hit Alt, hold down Alt, and then click on the layer mask. So now we have a layer mask here, and I'm going to put this layer mask in darken mode. Right? Alright, so now we have this layer in darken mode, and we're ready to start editing. You have to make sure that we have it on pure black and white, and we want to have white as the foreground color to color in. So I'm going to choose my paintbrush tool. I'm going to make sure it's white by using, the colors that are here, and I'm going to increase my brush tool a little bit, and I'm going to make sure that my flow and opacity is at 100% each. And now I'm just going to paint in right here. And now I've painted in that window pull. And we can take a look and see what this looks like. I'm thinking that flash didn't look so good. I think I might prefer what the what HDR did instead of this. So there's another advantage of doing that HDR first, because this looks a little, it's kind of, the flash kind of grayed that out. So I'm going to undo that brush tool, and I think I might just leave that. Maybe I'll go in later and select it, and then just take the exposure of just this section down a little bit. But I'm going to leave it at that for right at the moment. And so now let's take a look, and we've got some shading down through here, and we still have some shades up in here that I'm not crazy about, and we also have these are kind of overexposed. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to fix some of this shading. So I'm going to go back to Lightroom. I'm going to find, so this picture looks like it doesn't have that shading behind the curtain, and this looks pretty white here. So I'm going to use it for that area, and that is actually the same picture, or we could go to this flash picture and see what that looks like. I think I like this a little better. So I'm going to take the window pull picture again, and we don't have to go back we don't have to right mouse click and go to edit in Photoshop. We can go right back into Photoshop, and we can paste another layer. I'm going to post another layer of that same one that we just posted earlier, and I'm going to hold Alt, do a layer mask, and this time I'm going to put it in luminosity mode. And in luminosity mode, anytime I'm doing any kind of blending, the magic number on the flow is usually around 6%. So I'm going to keep it around 6%. I usually get a pretty big brush that's feathered out, and then I'm going to start taking out some of this shade. So there, good. See, I'm getting rid of some of that shadow, even though it is quite overexposed in here, but since we're using such a low flow, we're getting rid of a lot of that shading that we don't want. And it's actually dark over there, so I'm going to undo that. I don't know what the refrigerator, it's dark too. Undo. Okay, so the next point will be, I'm going to bring that up a little bit, and the next point will be these light fixtures, the light bulbs. So I'm going to go back into Lightroom. I'm going to pick one of the exposures that has just pretty good glow of the light fixtures, even if they're this dim. Because what we're going to do is we're blending it. We're not actually putting that in by like this, but we're going to blend them together, and that makes them stand out. So I'm going to right mouse click over here on this picture that has the best glow, a yellow glow of the light fixtures, and edit in Photoshop. And here we are. I'm going to select all, copy, go back to the original image, and I'm going to paste. Okay, I'm going to disable this layer mask for a moment. Actually, I'm going to bring all this back up. I don't want all this here. I'm going to try to get there so you can see all the layers. Okay, so I'm going to disable that and disable this layer mask. And then I'm going to select all the layers. Hold down the Shift key, select all layers. And I'm going to auto align layers. And you can create an action for that as well. Okay, so now I can put these masks back on, and I have this on top. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, select on layer mask, and I'm going to have this at flow at 6%, have this at white. I'm going to take my caps lock off so I can get a cursor again. There we go. And I'm going to shrink my pen, my brush size. An easy way to do the brush size like that, if you hold the Alt key down and then move your mouse right and left, it adjusts your mouse your brush size without having to go into the brush. Or if you go up and down, and that changes the hardness. I like a pretty soft brush though. So I'm going to scroll down, go down a little bit further, and I'm at flow 6%, and I'm going to just tap on these until I get these lights to kind of glow instead of being washed out. Just like that. Okay, so now they actually look like lights that are glowing, and there. Alright, so after that's done, I take a look at it, and it's looking pretty good. I still need to do my sweetening on it, but it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save it as a PSD, and that way I can save all the layers, but I'm going to create a new folder in here and call it Fixed 1. And I'm going to save this file as Fixed 1. Alright, so now let's go back into Lightroom. Now normally I would do all of these before I go back in, but I want to show you the whole process of just one picture. So I'm going to go now back into Lightroom. I'm going to go back into Library, and I'm going to import go back to my desktop. Practice folder, and then Fixed 1. And here's the picture that we just worked on, and I'm going to import that. So the second process that we do, go back to develop now, we have this one file, is the sweetening mode. Now before I told you about the special sauce, and this is where we use that. So you take a look at it, and you take a look, it really brightens things up. But it also kind of can make it a little orange, so you have to be careful here about how much of this you use. So if you click on it, I'm going to go over here to, and that's something else that drives me crazy about this program. And so I'm going to dehaze a little bit, darken this up a little bit. I'm going to take the shadows down, so that brings that wood back down. But you can see that it's really brightened stuff up and made actually this door look a lot nicer too. So I'm going to bring clarity up even more, and maybe the shadows a little bit further down to make it look a little bit more natural. And we're starting to get some shading up here again, but I like a little bit of shading to make it look natural. I'm going to bring it up a little bit, bring the whites up, try to get some of that shade out. Okay, so that looks pretty good. This might be overexposed a little bit, so I'm going to take the brush tool. So this is the adjustment brush tool. I'm going to click on it, and when it's clicked, you can see all these little dots around here, and then you can control by painting in certain things. So right now, if you double click on effects, it's going to zero everything out. So I want to take the exposure down in this area a little bit, so I'm going to pull this exposure down, and I'm going to make a brush tool, you know, about the right size, and I'm just kind of brush in now and lower the exposure for outside. Now I'm getting a little sloppy here. I got it on the door a little bit. Normally I wouldn't do that, but alright, so I just want to try to get through this lesson for you though. So I did that. I brought the exposure down a little bit there to make that look nice. Anywhere else you think? So if you want to like bring the exposure up of here and over here that looks a little dark, you could hit new, and then now it creates a new brush, and that keeps all the changes that we made here. I'm going to bring the exposure up for some areas, and like bring the exposure up on this refrigerator, right? And maybe a tad on this shelf here, on the floor here. We want some shading, but right, and maybe on the ceiling right here, get some of this shade out of here. And just paint into what you think looks good. And I'm going to see if I can bring the exposure back up on that wood where I accidentally painted over it. Well, it's just all a matter of, you know, your visual taste on how things should look at this point. When you're done with that, then you scroll down here to where it says transform, and this is where we're going to fix all the wide angle effect of having lines that are not straight in the room. So you click on constrain crop and go to auto, and boom, now everything is perfectly straight. And then one other trick that I do, I take this aspect and I pull it to the left just a tad to make it look a little bigger, and I'm there. And so basically there we have a finished product. And then I would just go through an entire line. So if you would have done all the pictures at once, you would have imported them all, and they all would have been down here, and you wouldn't have to go back into Photoshop at this point. You just go in each picture, fix every picture, and then when you're done, you select all the pictures and you go to export, and you go to export here, and then we're going to put it in the subfolder fixed 2. And we want to make sure it's the same as the original folder. And the original folder right now is the fixed 1 folder in the practice folder. So now I'm going to put in a subfolder to create a subfolder called fixed 2. And so I'm going to click export. All right. And so now if we go to our folders, putting it over here for you to see, this is our fixed 1, and we have a fixed 2. And the fixed 2 here is the picture that we just completed. And that is our completed processing of that picture, except it's in high resolution. So what we want to do now is we want to open these pictures. Now usually I would do all the exports, and so this whole folder would be full, and I could select them all and then right mouse click and then say, or I can drag them into Photoshop. So I'm going to click on Photoshop, and you can see even the cropping problem that we had from where our camera wasn't completely aligned for each bracket is now gone, because when we go into fixing the or fixing the lens, wide angle lens issue, it stretches the picture out enough where we no longer have that little bit of cropping at the end where we have at the edges from the alignment. So here we are here. Now to get it back down to the size that we need, we would go to first image size, and then for a width I do 1920, and make sure that it's all automatic, and then that this is automatically going to change with it. Everything's going to resample. Resolution 240. I'm going to click OK. So now we have a smaller picture. I'm going to go to File, Export, Save for Web Legacy. And I always pick this up with either 4 up, click the 4 up tab, click this right one, which is one of the higher resolution ones. It's going to be one of the bigger files, so it's the best quality. I'm going to go to high quality. And hit save. And it's going to ask me save where. Now I'm going to make another folder now. And I'm going to say fixed 3 reduced. And I'm going to save it in there. So now, if we take a look at our folder, we have the original files. We have where our fixed 1 file will all be in here. And then fixed 2. I'm in the wrong folder, so hold on. Where's my practice file? Practice folder. Okay, so we got our fixed 1, our fixed 2, and our fixed 3 reduced. And there is our picture that goes into fixed 3 reduced. And once you populate this whole folder with all the pictures from the house, you're done. So that is lesson 1 for a simple interior shot.